What's going on, guys? This is Daniel, one half of the Kwak Brothers. If you've seen our videos in the past, you checked out a lot of HELOC strategy in regards to how to pay down a mortgage or a loan in a third of the time. We talked about using the chunking strategy. We also made a video on a HELOC strategy, how to use it to get passive income. Now let's triple down. Let's get into the real business and talk about how to use a HELOC or a line of credit to take advantage of the next recession. That's right, I said it. So without further ado, let's go, let's get deep into the material, let's talk about it, cue that intro, and let's go get it right into the meat. Alright guys, welcome back. So let's talk about the HELOC strategy. But first, we need to understand exactly how cycles work. Economically speaking, we talk about cycles, we talk about, a recession, economy, whatnot, talk about monetary policy, fiscal policy, but we really need to understand the concept of a cycle. What does it mean, for an economy to be in a cycle, right? What does it mean for us to be in a recession? So let's go ahead and talk about that. I'm going to go ahead and illustrate here on this whiteboard, and I'm going to go ahead and start off by using an analogy that a cycle is a lot like different seasons, right? So let's go right into it. So we have what's called an economic summer. An economic summer, if we're going to describe what an economic summer is, well, long story short, it's exactly what you think it is. These are quote unquote the good times, right? This is when the president comes out and says, well, we've got a GDP growth of over 4%. We got this, we got that, things are good, money is cheap. So, again, these are the good times. And a lot of times, this is where the rates are low. And when I say rates low, let me capitalize this. So what I'm referring to here is what I'm referring to is a concept called monetary policy. Now, the way monetary policy works is that there's a central banking system. In the United States, we call that the Federal Reserve. They set a certain rate in which the commercial banks can borrow against the central banking system, which in turn allows us to borrow from the banks, the consumers, which is us, right? So we have the central banking system in the United States called the Federal Reserve. We have the commercial banking system, and then we have us. Whenever the rates are low, that means the commercial banks get their money from cheap, which means they get to give that money out cheap as well. So right now, especially, everybody wants to get into investing, right? That's all of us. A lot of these different avenues are preaching real estate investing. All right, stock market, especially in the last 6 months, not as much in the last 2-3 weeks. And I'm recording in early 2019, right? The last 3, 4, 5 weeks haven't been that great, right? But in the last 2-3 years, the stock market has been pretty good. A lot of people have been singing praises about the stock market. In October of 2018, they hit a record month of going over 7% return, right? That hasn't happened since 2013. But everybody's talking about investing. Money is cheap. And of course, that's what's going to happen. There's a lot of YouTube ads out there, Facebook ads about, their program, the business program, or get this book for free, or, these are millionaire habits, whatever it is, right? The money is cheap. Everybody's into investing. It's an economic summer. Now, let's talk about how that affects real estate prices, because ultimately, that's what's going to affect the HELOC that we're talking about and what we're referring to in this video. Now, in terms of real estate values, what do real estate values tend to do during an economic summer? Well, let's break this down, right? If we're taking the basic concept of supply and demand, whenever investing is talked about, whether it's in the forefront or, and the money is cheap and rates are low, money is, again, cheap in terms of where you get it from, and there's economic good times, what do we guess in terms of what's going to happen to the real estate values? You guessed it, real estate values are up. Real estate values are really, really high because it's simple supply and demand. If you have a single property, whether it be a single family house, a duplex, right, or even an apartment complex, which of course we can get other lines of credit through collateralizing an investment property, whether that's a 36 unit or an 80 unit. But let's go ahead and just take a look at the single family housing market just for getting a HELOC sake point of view, right? So if real estate values, a lot of people have money, of course the value is going to go up, that which affects our HELOC. So simple supply and demand. If there's more people at the table with money in one particular house, right, or property, of course the prices are going to go up, right? It's the auction effect. However, when it's the opposite, the contrarian is going to be true. So when we have real estate values go up, what does that do to our HELOC? That means we get more power in our HELOC. It means the higher the value, well, of course, we could take a HELOC on a certain LTV ratio, it gets more power. Now let's talk about the other end of the spectrum. Let's talk about economic winters. Cycles typically are between 8 to 10 years, considering the fact that our last recession was in 2008, which really it did happen in the last 2 quarters of 2008 and the first 2 quarters of 2009, right? Those 4 quarters is when the recession really hit us, kind of the deepest point, so to speak. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about the economic winter. Opposite to the economic summer, this is known as what's called a buyer's market. In a buyer's market, that means, it's pretty self-explanatory. The buyer typically has more of the leverage, they have more of the power. And in this point, again, quite opposite to the economic summer, money is a bit more pricier. I don't know if I spelled pricier right, but we'll go ahead and go with it. The money is pricier, it's not cheaper at all, and typically financing is hard to obtain. Now, here are some good things about the economic winter, especially if you're a savvy investor and you're financially literate and you definitely know what you're doing. Well, it basically means that property values are what? Are down. Exactly. But at the same time, we have a number of foreclosures, because remember what happened in the economic summer. During the economic summer, what happens is a lot of individuals get into investing, they get into deals, especially in the single-family housing market, and oftentimes they're over-leveraged, right? And I know a lot of individuals say, well, I don't care about my real estate value, it's not going to affect my cash flow. There's some truth to that, but there's also things that we've got to watch out for. For example, I've met hundreds and hundreds of individuals traveling around the country training on this stuff. I've met hundreds and even thousands of individuals who went a little too crazy during the economic summers. They overpaid for their property, and guess what? They're no call, they got foreclosed on, they lost the property because they didn't focus on building the equity and they didn't pay attention to the value of their real estate. I mean, let's really break it down. Let's use common sense, right? If I'm a bank and I put a note on a particular single family house, an investor came to me, all right, I'm the president of a bank, all right, they got a mortgage out and a note, they took it on a house. If the value of the collateral, the real estate, which is the collateral on the note, if my value of the collateral is going down, and of course we know from 2008, there were properties that went down 50% in value, right? There were properties that went 20, 30%, 40%, and even all the way down to 50, 60%. If the value of my collateral is going down 50%, what am I going to do? Of course, I'm going to give my investor a call, I'm going to knock on their door and say, hey, listen, we need this much for you to continue your note. That's a lot of things that people don't understand, and of course, we won't know that until we see it for ourselves. So we got foreclosures, we got over-leveraged properties, we also have some short sales, and there's a lot of opportunities there, especially when the real estate values get lower during the economic winters. So let's talk about a recession. What is a characteristic of a recession? Well, I think we've already kind of stated it. It's when economic times are not good. It's when the money is pricier. It's when financing gets difficult. It's when overall a lot of families experience some hardships. There's a lot of firing. There's a lot of layoffs. Unemployment is up. And there's a lot of things that the government will try to do in terms of fiscal policy to try to bring it back, such as whether it's raising taxes or stimulating the economy through monetary policy, right? Lowering the rates, making money cheaper, and possibly even some quantitative easing, right? And I know I'm spitting off some more advanced tactics right now, but if you want to check more of those out, check out some of our other videos and whatnot. But if you think about what happens during a recession, it's exactly what's going on during the economic winter. So how do we take advantage of it? Let's bring it all back. Let's put it all in one shelf, so to speak, and let's talk about the concept of what to do with a HELOC. So if we take a look at the timeline, all right, if we take a look at the timeline right here, we've got the economic summer and we have the economic winter. Now let's consider that you as an investor or just a random individual, right, tends to have a property, right? Like let's say you have a property. So you have a property right here. And let's say during the economic summer, let's say your value right here is about $150,000. And let's say during the economic winter, you have a value of about $110,000. And so during the economic summer, the value of the property is $150,000. The banks are a lot more lenient So when it comes to HELOC programs, line of credit programs, or even just standard mortgages and loan programs, during the economic summer, they tend to be a little bit more flexible, simply because it's good times. The money is cheap. The money that the supplier they're getting their money from is giving it out and loaning it out in terms of a lower rate. So of course, it's going to incentivize them to be able to loan it out cheaper so they can make more money. Because at the end of the day, banks are also businesses. So let's say you got a property value of 150,000, and let's just go ahead and assume it's paid off because you've watched Sam's mortgage payoff video, which I think it's about what, like 25 minutes long. Let's say it's paid off, right? So if we got a value of $150,000, and I'm telling a lot of my investor friends, listen, if you're buying a piece of property and you're paying it outright, or you're using a 1031 exchange, or whatever you're doing, and you acquire a house and it hasn't been valued or hasn't been appraised in a while, I encourage you to get it appraised during the economic summer when the money is cheap. If anything, this is where you want to get your property revalued and reappraised. A lot of the appraisers are attached to financial institutions like credit bureaus or banks. Imagine a scenario, and I'm just throwing ideas in your guys' head for you guys to really take advantage of the recession using the HELOC strategy. Imagine a scenario where you actually acquire a single family house, or you use a single family house that you already have, you get it revalued, you get it reappraised, and of course, if you're buying a piece of single family house, the likelihood of what you want to do is you want to put some rehab into it, you want to force appreciate it, mainly because you want to have a good, strong loan to value ratio. If you're only at a 50% loan to value ratio, obviously it doesn't make much sense to pull out a HELOC, right? Because why would you do that unless you have a very low loan to value ratio and very high equity position? So imagine if you just did some rehab to it, you increased the equity, you forced appreciated it by whatever means, and of course there's other videos we have on real estate investing that can help you do that. But let's say you got it reappraised, revalued, and the very same bank, you pulled out a HELOC based on the evaluation of the economic summer when the money is cheap and the competition, right, the demand is high. So we get a HELOC, and let's say we get it at 60% or 50, 66% value HELOC. That gives us $100,000 because 66% of 150,000 is 100,000. Now, if we take a $100,000 HELOC, let's say we apply it and we wait. We hold on to that HELOC. Let's say we use good credit strategies, whether we use that $100,000 for small projects, we pay it off, whether it be wholesaling, whether it be real estate investing, whether it be any other form of investing in general. Maybe you use that HELOC for, again, talking about the mortgage payoff video, using that HELOC to actually use it on daily, monthly expenses, paying it off your income, whether it be a W-2 income, whether it be real estate income or business income, paying it off, increasing that revolving line of credit, aka our home equity line of credit. Now, if we're considering the fact that this span right here is 8 to 10 years, we've got 8 to 10 years to do that, right? And I say this because, well, I prefer this in terms of a HELOC being secured by that collateral, by that real estate property. Now, the beautiful thing about a HELOC in terms of revolving, that's not a loan. A line of credit is not a loan. Therefore, it's not going to matter as much in terms of what happens to the value here. As long as you have a fixed rate secure HELOC, you're going to be fine, right? Because it's not a loan, right? The value does not matter, right? Not matter as much, right? I don't want to make blanket statements in this video, but you have about 8 to 10 years. And I know a lot of the experts are saying, the recession is going to hit in 2020, 2021, somewhere around there. Late 2020 is what they're saying. So let's go ahead and assume that we've got about 18 months to implement and use this strategy. So during those 18 months, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be using the mortgage payoff strategy that, again, Sam talks about. You're going to be using this for investing, business income. And let's say we get that HELOC cap, right, the credit up to about 125,000, right, increasing the credit limit on that HELOC through multiple transactions, whether it be, again, using it for your monthly expenses and paying it off, implementing the debt acceleration strategy. Of course, that's going to help with our revolving line of credit as well. And realistically, it's going to be more than 125,000, especially if you're using multiple streams of income to pay it off. And of course, we have videos on building multiple streams of income, right, on a personal financial level. So 18 months, $125,000. But let's look at this. Economic winter comes around, the value of the home drops to $110,000. But from what I see, we still have this property, right? And although the value has dropped, we still have this HELOC for $125,000. Now, that right there, $125,000 is capital. And like what my mentors taught me, capital equals energy. Capital is energy. And if we're going to revisit the concept of an economic winter, well, what does this mean? It means real estate values are low and properties are cheap. What does that mean if you tie these two together, if you marry those two together? If you have real estate values are cheap and you have a good sum of capital / energy, right? And this is a strategy which you don't need millions of dollars, right? You don't need cash sitting in the bank. You're simply leveraging, you're using the power of leverage without taking anything away, without over leveraging yourself, and you're using a secured fixed rate line of credit. You're using that capital, turning it into energy, and you're marrying that with real estate values and properties during an economic winter. You have now doubled your cash flow. You doubled your assets simply because you've leveraged one property, not refinancing, not taking anything away, not stripping the equity out and making yourself even more vulnerable to economic winters. You leveraged it the right way by taking advantage of the economic summer, right? Taking advantage of when the money is cheap and when the competition's high and the demand is high. You use it to leverage it into a HELOC. Use the mortgage payoff strategy to increase the capability of that energy and that capital, and you're finally waiting for the right moment, waiting for the economic winter to come when there's a lot of over leveraging, right? There's the result of a lot of over leveraging, a lot of real estate values, a lot of properties and cheap. When properties are cheap, you're using that energy to take advantage of all those people who refinance during the economic summer, which leads me to say this strategy is a lot better than getting a house, rehabbing it, stripping the equity out, and doing it again to another house. Because what are you doing when you do that strategy? You're over leveraging yourself. You're killing your assets. Simply, you're shooting yourself in the foot by taking out a loan during an economic summer and over leveraging yourself and stretching it out. And when the economic winter hits, what's going to happen? Right? Not a lot of good stuff. Everything that I'm saying here is because I've witnessed it myself. All right, I've traveled the country training people, hundreds and thousands of people, and I cannot tell you the amount of people that I've met where they told me, oh yeah, I used to have 30 houses, right? Between 2001 and 2008, what I did is I bought a house, I put rehab into it, I refinanced and stripped all the equity out, I took that capital, did it to another house, and I did it until I had 30 houses. Then my values dropped, and I got a call from one bank on one property saying I owe them $50,000 because the value of my collateral has gone down. In order for me to continue my note, I need to fork up 50 grand. Guess what happened? They called the note due. Once all 29 other banks found out that that's what happened, they called note due on all 30 houses. Guys, I've seen this myself. It happens again and again and again. It happens every cycle, which is why we call it economic summer, economic winter. When we're talking about investing, we need to know the content, like how to rehab, how to get a HELOC, how to wholesale, how to understanding what a cap rate is. But we also need to understand the context. There's both content and context. Context is understanding how the cycle works and using your content to take advantage of your knowledge in context. That's how you build true wealth. Leveraging things the right way rather than over leveraging yourself, thinning yourself out, and when the hardships come, really shooting yourself in the foot and losing it all. Right? So thanks, guys. I hope this information has been very helpful. Now, I know I said a lot of value, a lot of knowledge here. If you want to get in an argument in the comment section, please do. I believe in an idea of meritocracy. The Ray Dalio concept, where I want to hear every single piece of feedback. I encourage you guys to, again, get away from the emotional aspect. Let's put up some real facts, real numbers, real arguments, and let's get a discussion going, because that's a way that myself, you, and everybody else can get smarter. I hope this video helped you out and gave you a lot of value. Again, my name is Daniel Kwak, one half of the Kwak Brothers. I'll see you guys in the next one.
Well, hello there. You made it to the end of this video. Congratulations. And that probably means that you like our video and you love what we did. So be sure, if you want to get more information, more YouTube videos from us about real estate investing, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon to make sure that you get notifications on our future videos about real estate investing.